A brother's neglect and a family's secret. Was I right to expose the truth? I, a 35-year-old woman, am currently adrift in a desolate sea of anger, guilt, and raw grief. My family, once my presumed bedrock, now feels like a war-torn ruin, and I'm genuinely tormented by the question of whether I'm the one who ignited its destruction. My younger brother, Daniel, 32, and I grew up in a comfortable suburban home, the children of loving, albeit somewhat traditional, parents. From the outside, we presented a facade of typical sibling camaraderie, shared childhood adventures, whispered secrets under the covers, and an unbreakable bond supposedly forged through countless backyard escapades and family vacations. But beneath that polished surface, there was always an unspoken, yet omnipresent, dynamic. Daniel was the charming, often irresponsible, favored child. He was the youngest, effortlessly charming, and seemed to glide through life with an almost reckless abandon. Every one of his endeavors, from dropping out of college to pursue a vaguely defined, entrepreneurial vision, to investing in a series of questionable get-rich-quick schemes, was met with effusive praise, endless encouragement, and often, significant financial backing from our parents. When Daniel decided to pursue a questionable cryptocurrency venture, my parents readily took out a substantial chunk of their retirement savings, believing it was an investment in their brilliant son's future. Their pride in him, despite his frequent failures, was boundless, almost a tangible force that filled every room in our home. I, on the other hand, was always viewed as more grounded, more sensible, perhaps even a little less ambitious. My steady career as a high school teacher, a path I genuinely loved, was met with polite nods, veiled skepticism, and pointed questions about when I'd pursue something more lucrative. My university tuition was paid for, but every extra expense, every professional development course, every financial goal, was entirely my responsibility. There was no discussion of substantial loans or seed money for my dreams. Those resources seemed exclusively reserved for Daniel's grander, and perpetually failing, ventures. This subtle, yet persistent, favoritism permeated every aspect of our lives, creating an invisible but palpable divide. Daniel, bless his heart, never seemed to notice, taking their boundless generosity as his birthright, a natural consequence of his inherent charm. I, meanwhile, developed a gnawing sense of having to prove my worth, to fight for every scrap of recognition, to build my success entirely on my own merits. Our parents, I truly believe, thought they were being fair. They saw Daniel as needing investment, because his path was riskier and more impactful, while my independence, to them, was a sign of my inherent strength and self-reliance, not a consequence of their differential treatment. There was a deep-seated tension in our relationship, a silent rivalry that I always tried to suppress. I loved Daniel, of course, but his effortless existence, his unquestioning acceptance of parental handouts, often felt like a painful, constant reminder of my own perceived lesser status. The emotional tone was one of superficial harmony, masking my deep-seated resentment and Daniel's unacknowledged privilege. This core imbalance, buried beneath years of forced smiles and unspoken pain, was about to erupt with devastating consequences for all of us. The slow, grinding build-up to this family implosion has been a relentless, crushing pressure beneath the surface of my life for the past 5 years. It began when our father, Arthur, 65, received an early-onset Alzheimer's diagnosis. This devastating news instantly shattered our already precarious family dynamic. While I, living only a few towns away, immediately stepped up to manage his care, attending every doctor's appointment, navigating complex medical paperwork, coordinating caregivers, and managing his dwindling finances, Daniel, living nearly 1,000 miles away, remained largely a distant voice. He'd call Dad once a week, offer emotional support, and occasionally send a small, symbolic gift, but his practical contributions were virtually non-existent. He promised to visit for a weekend, then cancel last minute, citing an urgent business opportunity, or a client meeting that couldn't be missed. I tried, gently at first, to discuss sharing the overwhelming burden, both practical and financial. Daniel, Dad needs more consistent help, Could you commit to calling the home care agency once a week? Or contribute to the rising cost of his specialized medication? I'd ask, desperate for a reprieve. He'd sigh, a familiar, exasperated sound. Sarah, you know my schedule is insane right now. My startup is just on the cusp of a major breakthrough. I can't just drop everything. Besides, I'm just not wired for that kind of caregiving. I provide for him emotionally, that's my role. And you're so good at organizing everything, you're always so in control. His emotional support, while well-intentioned, didn't involve changing bedsheets, tracking complex prescriptions, or spending hours deciphering insurance forms. His occasional, often delayed, financial contributions barely covered a fraction of the mounting medical bills or the cost of the specialized elder care attorney I desperately hired. Dad, in his clearer moments, didn't help. When I'd complain about feeling utterly exhausted, he'd say, "Oh, but Daniel calls me every week. He's so busy with his big ideas. You're just so practical, dear. You manage it all so well." His unwitting enablement fueled Daniel's detachment and my simmering resentment. My own life began to shrink dramatically. My fulfilling teaching career felt constantly interrupted. My social life dwindled to almost nothing. I was perpetually exhausted, stressed, and consumed by a bitter sense of injustice. The early warning signs were screaming at me: constant panic attacks, waking up drenched in cold sweat, consumed by anxiety about Dad's care and Daniel's seemingly blissful indifference. Friends noticed my decline, offering support, but the relentless, all-consuming nature of caregiver burnout, especially with an absent sibling, was almost impossible to truly convey. Daniel, meanwhile, seemed to thrive, or at least maintain the illusion of it. His social media was a constant stream of lavish vacations, expensive gadgets, and triumphant, entrepreneurial milestones. The contrast was agonizing. This escalating tension, fueled by my physical and emotional exhaustion, Daniel's evasion, and Dad's unwitting enablement, built to an unbearable pressure. The dam was cracking, and I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that it was about to burst. The illusion of our family harmony was crumbling, revealing a gaping, festering wound of unfairness, unacknowledged sacrifice, and a dark secret that was slowly, insidiously coming to light. The powder keg finally detonated last Sunday morning. I had called Daniel, insisting he fly in for a crucial, non-negotiable family meeting at Dad's house. Dad's Alzheimer's had progressed to a point where living alone was no longer an option, and the memory care facility we'd been researching, which offered specialized dementia care, cost nearly $10,000 a month. Dad's modest retirement savings would be depleted within a year. Daniel arrived late, looking a bit disheveled from his flight but otherwise cheerful, carrying a brand-new, expensive drone. He greeted Dad warmly, then turned to me with a casual wave. "Hey sis. What's the big emergency? I had to cut short a very important investor meeting, you know." I laid out the grim financial facts, my voice strained but steady. I presented a meticulously prepared spreadsheet detailing Dad's dwindling income, his escalating medical expenses, and the projected astronomical costs of the memory care facility. Daniel barely glanced at it. He scoffed, a nervous, dismissive sound. Whoa, Sarah. That's a lot of numbers. You know my startup is in a critical funding phase right now. I can't just pull that kind of cash out of thin air. You're always so dramatic about money. Besides, you're the one who manages Dad's accounts. Haven't you been handling things?" His words, delivered with such an air of casual dismissal, were the final spark. The years of resentment, the endless sacrifices, the unacknowledged burden, and now, his implied accusation of my financial mismanagement, it all exploded. "Manage his accounts?" I shrieked, my voice cracking, tears of rage blurring my vision. "I've been doing more than just managing them, Daniel. I've been propping them up. And while I was trying to make ends meet, I noticed something. Something you conveniently forgot to mention." I pulled out a printout of Dad's bank statements, highlighting several large, undocumented transfers. "These, Daniel. These are massive transfers from Dad's account to your account." Tens of thousands of dollars. Over the past 3 years. What is this? My voice was raw, guttural. Daniel's face went white. His composure shattered. What are you talking about? He hissed, his eyes darting nervously towards Dad, who was watching us with a confused, slightly bewildered expression. Those were investments, Sarah. Family investments. For my startup. I was going to pay them back. It's not your business. Investments? I roared, stepping closer to him, my body trembling with a mix of fury and disgust. Investments from our father, who has Alzheimer's, who relies on us for everything? While I'm here scraping by, sacrificing my own career, draining my own savings for his care, you're siphoning off his meager retirement for your startup. You're his son too, Daniel. You don't get to just steal from him, and then pretend you're a visionary entrepreneur facing cash flow challenges. Dad, startled by the intensity, began to whimper. Please stop fighting. My head hurts. Daniel turned his furious gaze from me to Dad. See, Sarah? You're upsetting him. This is what you do. You always cause drama. You're just jealous of my ambition. It is drama, Daniel, when one sibling is caring for our vulnerable father while the other is financially abusing him. I retorted, my voice hoarse. You're a selfish, despicable thief. You've been living off his dwindling savings while I've been drowning in responsibility. This isn't just about money anymore, it's about a lifetime of your entitlement and my unacknowledged sacrifice. I grabbed my car keys, my heart pounding, and stormed out, leaving them both stunned and silent. The confrontation was brutal, messy, and utterly devastating. Daniel, cornered and exposed, clung to his narrative of temporary investments and righteous indignation, perhaps genuinely believing his actions were justifiable under his own entrepreneurial pressures. I, consumed by years of unacknowledged sacrifice and the shocking discovery of his profound betrayal, finally erupted in a desperate plea for justice. Both of us had understandable, though deeply flawed, motivations, leaving behind a wreckage of a family. The immediate aftermath of that explosive confrontation was a profound, suffocating silence. I drove away from Dad's house in a daze, the printout of the bank statements burning a hole in my lap, my body shaking uncontrollably. The white-hot rage that had fueled my outburst slowly drained away, replaced by a chilling numbness, then a crushing wave of grief. It felt like I hadn't just ended a fight, I had detonated my entire family structure, the one I had so painstakingly held together, only to discover it was built on a foundation of deceit and profound imbalance. The betrayal, the explicit evidence of Daniel's financial abuse, was a physical ache in my chest, a constant, gnawing pain that made it hard to breathe. For the first few days, I was a ghost in my own life. I barely ate, and sleep was an elusive torment, plagued by nightmares of Daniel's furious face, Dad's confused whimpers, and the undeniable proof of theft. My mind raced, constantly replaying every word of the argument, every subtle slight from the past, every instance of their unwavering, almost blind, support for Daniel. I felt foolish, utterly naive, for not having dug deeper, for trusting that the charming, youngest son would honor his father's financial security. The guilt also started to creep in, an insidious whisper suggesting I was too harsh, too selfish, too quick to expose such a devastating truth in front of Dad. Had I been too extreme? Did I destroy any chance of reconciliation by revealing the depths of his deception so brutally and publicly? My daily life became an almost unbearable burden. The relentless demands of Dad's care, which hadn't magically disappeared, now felt even heavier, amplified by the emotional chasm that had opened up. I still had to coordinate caregivers, manage his medications, and ensure his safety, but now I did it with a crushing sense of isolation and a new, terrifying fear about his long-term financial security. My focus at work, usually sharp and dedicated, was shattered. I'd stare blankly at my lesson plans for hours, unable to concentrate, my mind trapped in a relentless loop of anger, sadness, and furious calculations about how to recover Dad's stolen money and ensure his proper care for the rest of his life. My appetite vanished, and a constant, dull headache throbbed behind my eyes, a physical manifestation of the emotional turmoil. The conflict also profoundly affected my other relationships. My husband, David, was my unwavering rock. He listened patiently as I poured out my heart, offered constant validation, and held me as I cried for hours. "You had to expose it, Sarah," he insisted, his voice gentle but firm. "You did the right thing. This isn't your fault she did this." My closest friends, whom I finally confided in, were shocked but supportive, validating my feelings of injustice. But even their support couldn't fill the void left by the potential loss of my family, or the terrifying silence from Daniel. My parents were distraught. My mother called, her voice frail, begging me to think of the family and not ruin things permanently by going after Daniel. She seemed completely unable to grasp the severity of Daniel's actions, or the fundamental breach of trust, often trying to shift blame onto me for the drama. This inability to see my perspective, to acknowledge their deep-seated favoritism, felt like a final, crushing betrayal. The silence from Daniel was deafening. No calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation. It was as if I had become a ghost in his life, and the thought was excruciating. The grief for the lost sibling bond, for the shared history that now felt irrevocably tainted by deception, was almost unbearable. I missed the carefree brother I thought I had, even as I resented the thief he had become. The weight of it all, the loneliness, the confusion, and the terrifying uncertainty of what comes next, felt utterly crushing. It's been almost 3 weeks since the explosion at Dad's house, and the silence from Daniel is absolute. My parents are in a state of fragile denial, alternating between pleading with me to forgive and forget, for the sake of family unity, and subtly blaming me for causing a scene. David has been my unwavering anchor, my steadfast presence through this storm, but I feel the strain on him. I've spent countless sleepless nights replaying every moment of that confrontation, every subtle slight from childhood, every unacknowledged sacrifice. My mind is a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and doubts, and I desperately need an outside perspective to make sense of this wreckage. Was I too harsh? Did I go too far by publicly exposing Daniel's actions and calling him a thief? I understand that from his perspective, he might genuinely have seen those funds as his to manage, perhaps even to invest aggressively for everyone's benefit, and when things went south, he panicked. He might truly feel that my steady job means I didn't need that money as much as he did for his struggling ventures. Perhaps he believes I'm just jealous of his past achievements, or perceived ones, and trying to ruin his reputation. Is my years of pent-up resentment and exhaustion coloring my judgment, making me an unfair accuser, an ungrateful sister? On the other hand, the weight of being perpetually overlooked, of having my sacrifices and independent successes minimized while Daniel was secretly siphoning off our father's meager retirement, feels like a profound, lifelong injustice. This wasn't a minor oversight. It was a calculated act of financial abuse against our vulnerable, ailing father, committed while I was pouring my life into his care. It's not just about the money, it's about the emotional invalidation, the feeling that his entitlement knew no bounds, and that he was willing to steal from his own parent. Was it wrong of me to finally demand accountability and justice for Dad, even if it meant a dramatic, public confrontation that shattered our family's fragile peace? I felt like I was fighting for Dad's dignity, for his financial security, and for the acknowledgement of my own worth, not just as a caregiver, but as an equal child. So, Reddit, I'm turning to you because I'm lost and heartbroken. Was I wrong for finally exposing my brother's financial exploitation of our father, leading to a complete rupture in our family relationships? Was my outburst justified, a necessary act to finally protect Dad from further financial harm and liberate myself from years of being overlooked and exploited? Or did I simply destroy any chance of reconciliation and cause irreversible pain, making myself the villain in this tragic story? I need honest, unbiased perspectives, because right now, I'm consumed by guilt, grief, and confusion, and I don't know how to navigate this fractured family dynamic or secure Dad's future.